on the news.
Many villages will be destroyed exactly because this help came too late.
A top Ukrainian official making a plea for more help as Russian forces regroup for more possible attacks in the country. Plus, celebration in the Senate as Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is confirmed as the first black woman ever to serve on the Supreme Court. Governors from several states working on a solution to get those sky-high gas prices to come down. And
I think I cried almost every appointment up until he was there.
A mother thankful for the doctors who performed a miraculous procedure to save her young son from a rare medical condition. I'm Christine Persichetti. Current News starts right now.
My agenda is very simple. It has only 3 items on it. It's weapons, weapons, and weapons.
The foreign minister of Ukraine making a direct request for more weapons. The top Ukrainian official made the dramatic request at NATO headquarters in Brussels ahead of some key meetings. All this as the Russian military regroups for more attacks. Gloria Pazmino has the latest.
The United Nations General Assembly has voted to suspend Russia from the Human Rights Council as its invasion of Ukraine appears to be shifting amid more evidence of atrocities, while NATO leaders hold a critical meeting to decide how to move forward.
The sickening images and accounts coming out of Bucha and other parts of Ukraine have only strengthened our collective resolve and unity.
Meanwhile, in the war zone, Ukrainians are burying their dead, bracing for attack, and digging through the rubble. It's all part of daily life in Ukraine's eastern region. While the Russian military continues its offensive against Ukraine and forces push east, on Thursday in Brussels, Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba issued a plea for help following a meeting of NATO foreign affairs ministers.
Either you help us now, and I'm speaking about days, not weeks, or your help will come too late.
Ukrainian officials say more fighting is underway in the east. While Western nations debate any additional sanctions and pledge more aid to Ukraine, the attacks appear to have no end in sight.
This war may last for weeks, but also months, and possibly also for years. And therefore, we need to prepare for the long haul.
Gloria Pazmino, Current News.
Pope Francis met with Ukraine's new ambassador to the Holy See on Thursday. Andriy Yurash presented his credentials to the Holy Father, as is customary for new ambassadors. According to Yurash, he had an inspiring and extremely motivating conversation with the pontiff and Vatican Secretary of State Pietro Parolin. He also said the Holy See is, quote, doing everything possible to stop the war. Officials are still trying to pinpoint the true death toll so far in the war in Ukraine. According to NATO's latest numbers, between 7,000 and 15,000 Russian soldiers have been killed. The last time Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky updated on their losses, he said his country lost around 1,300 service members. This as more than 4.3 million refugees have left Ukraine and an estimated 6.5 million people are displaced within the country. Coming up in this newscast, we'll see Ukrainian soldiers remember their fallen. Now, because of the war, cemeteries are being forced to find new land to bury those who have passed. That's coming up on Currents News. The war in Ukraine has also caused gas prices in the U.S. to skyrocket, but fortunately, they're starting to level out. That's according to GasBuddy.com, which estimates the average cost for a gallon of gas for the nation is $4.15. That's a slight improvement compared to roughly a month ago when the national average peaked at $4.35. New York City is also experiencing a downward trend. The cost for a gallon in the Big Apple now averaging $4.25. With those prices still at high levels, governors across the country are searching for ways to help ease the pain at the pump. As Eva Micken reports, the challenge comes amid a very tough election year.
Across the country, governors from both parties scrambling to address the skyrocketing cost of gas amid record inflation.
Social Security payments aren't going up like my gas and fuel prices are.
States flush with cash from solid economic growth and federal COVID relief funds flowing to them fueling tax revenues that have left many states with big surpluses. In California, where gas prices are the highest in the nation, Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom, facing re-election this year, proposing $11 billion in relief by way of $400 debit cards and free rides on public transit. In Maryland, Republican Governor Larry Hogan signed legislation enacting a 30-day suspension of the state's gas tax and has said he supports extending it to 90 days. In Georgia, Republican Governor Brian Kemp signing an income tax refund bill into law, more than $1 billion in refunds to eligible Georgians in the coming weeks. But Governor Kemp's Trump-backed Republican challenger David Perdue calls the refund an election year giveaway, a desperate attempt to get votes. In Connecticut, Democratic Governor Ned Lamont, who is also up for re-election this year, says the bipartisan legislation he signed into law to halt the gas tax for 3 months and suspend bus fares will make a difference.
If you're a single mom, it costs you $3 each way to go get groceries. Make life a little more affordable for you as well.
University of New Haven political science professor Chris Haynes says for Democrats who are already facing a tough midterm environment, these mitigation strategies may not do much to change their electoral prospects.
What Americans care about in terms of elections are broader perceptions of the economy, how they think the economy is doing, not necessarily how they're doing individually economically. And so even if they do get these benefits and they feel these benefits, it may not redound to the benefit of the politicians that are passing them.
That was Eva Mickend reporting. New Yorkers will see a bit of relief themselves. The state's already late budget includes a partial gas tax suspension that will be in effect from June through the end of the year. The state now gets about 33 cents a gallon, and the deal would cover about 16 cents of that. The NYPD's anti-gun unit is failing to lower crime. This as shootings and violence in the city show no signs of slowing down. That's according to new data released by the police department, which says crime in March increased by 36.5% compared to last year. This increase includes every major category of violent crimes except homicide, which dropped nearly 16% compared to last year. In the Diocese of Brooklyn, hundreds of high school students gathered at Holy Family Church in Queens to see a relic of the first possible millennial saint, Carlo Acutis. Bishop Robert Brennan holding the relic for students from 8 different high schools to venerate at a prayer rally. The piece of the teen's pericardium, the membrane that surrounded and protected his heart, was brought to Brooklyn by Archbishop Domenico Sorrentino of Assisi. That's the Italian town where Acutis was buried. The beatified tech whiz, who is known for creating a website that cataloged all of the Eucharistic miracles around the world, is one step away from sainthood. Another relic of Acutis is also currently in the Diocese of Brooklyn. It's several strands of his hair. From the first possible millennial saint to the first black woman on the Supreme Court approved in a historic vote on Capitol Hill, Ketanji Brown Jackson was confirmed Thursday by the full Senate on what Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called a joyous, momentous, groundbreaking day. The tally was 53 to 47. 3 Republican senators, Mitt Romney of Utah, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Susan Collins of Maine, joined all of their Democratic colleagues in voting yes for President Biden's pick.
Today was meant to be a private moment between the president and Judge Jackson, and we made a decision late in the process that we would have some photographers, some of your colleagues in the news media, in the room to capture it for history.
An event is planned for Friday when we'll hear from both President Biden and Jackson. Jackson's confirmation won't change the ideological balance of the court. She'll replace Justice Stephen Breyer when he retires this summer. Catholic leaders are worried about Judge Jackson and her pro-abortion views. Later this year, the High Court is expected to decide on a long-awaited case that challenges Roe v. Wade. In a press release expressing concern following her nomination, the pro-life group, the Susan B. Anthony List, had this to say. Ketanji Brown Jackson is backed by many of America's most radical pro-abortion groups. She is on record opposing the free speech rights of pro-life advocates pleading to save lives outside abortion centers and supporting the false claim that abortion is health care. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tested positive for COVID-19 just a day after appearing with President Biden at a White House event. Her spokesperson says she is not showing any symptoms right now. Pelosi is fully vaccinated and boosted, and the spokesperson says she will quarantine according to CDC guidance. Coming up on Currents News, COVID cases are starting to rise again across the country, and experts warn it could be a sign of the times to come.
There's almost going to be no avoiding getting exposed to these variants as time goes on.
But Catholic Medical Association Dr. Robert Tabali is offering us a bit of hope in the worldwide fight against COVID. Plus, Pope Francis reveals who is writing this year's Good Friday meditations at the Vatican. We'll tell you more about it. Plus, how you can celebrate Holy Week in the Diocese of Brooklyn. And the first birthday that almost didn't come, the miracle that saved the life of a little boy before he was even born.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
Just as everyone starts to feel some relief, COVID cases are starting to rise again across the country. As the New York City controller said last week after testing positive himself, we might be done with the virus, but the virus isn't done with us. Dr. Robert Tabali, an infectious disease specialist with the Catholic Medical Association, joins us now for an update on the pandemic. Hi, Dr. Tabali.
Hi, great to be with you today.
It's nice to see you again. Now, we just did a story this week about the lockdowns in Shanghai. Then we're hearing about a surge in cases in Europe, and researchers are tracking an uptick in cases here in the U.S. thanks to the Omicron subvariant. Are we still not out of the woods with this pandemic?
Well, what's happening, the major problem at the beginning of the whole pandemic was no one had any natural or artificial vaccine-related immunity to this virus. And now what we have, after the major Omicron surge through the United States and through most of the world, a very large majority of people either have natural immunity or vaccine-granted immunity. What's happening in China is their vaccine that they use there, the Sinovac vaccine, which was an inactivated virus particle, is not really very good vaccine and didn't offer very good protection early, and it certainly didn't offer protection ongoing for a year or more. And so due to their zero COVID policy, a lot of people weren't exposed to natural COVID infection, and now they're getting their first exposure to natural COVID infection. These variants, the Omicron BA1 that we saw ravage the United States recently, and the BA2, which is now causing about 84% of cases here in the United States, and there's an uptick of cases in the New York metropolitan area in northeastern United States. They are extremely infectious. Each one tens and tens of times more infectious than the previous one. So there's almost going to be no avoiding getting exposed to these variants as time goes on. But what happens is if you've had a natural infection or been fully vaccinated and or boosted, then you have an immunological memory. And for most people, the cases are very mild.
You mentioned boosters. An FDA advisory panel met this week to discuss the future of boosters. Just last week, the agency authorized a second booster for people over 50. So if you're healthy, do you need the boosters? And how often will we be getting them moving forward?
Well, if you're healthy, people like me don't think you need the booster. The booster actually boosts neutralizing antibodies, such as they are for the Omicron, which only about 20 to 30% of people get good neutralizing antibodies, which prevents you from getting infected. The major benefit of the vaccine is seen in the first two shots, where your body's immunological system actually gets trained how to treat or how to combat COVID if it becomes exposed to it. So just having two doses protects you against severe illness and death. If you, however, are severely immunocompromised, organ transplant, cancer patient, history of lymphoma, on profound immunosuppressive agents for autoimmune disorders, you should get boosted because you're the type of person that doesn't respond to the vaccine very well, and you need to have more vaccine protection.
So will healthy people need to get this shot every year, like the flu shot?
That's probably where we're going to head, because this is transitioning into more of like an influenza or common cold type of issue. The virus is going to continue to circulate, and people who've never had it and don't have any immunity, either vaccine or natural, could still get very tragically ill from it, especially if they have risk factors. So it would be in their best interest to get vaccinated.
All right, Dr. Robert Tabali of the Catholic Medical Association. It's always nice talking to you.
Great to be with you. God bless you all.
With Holy Week right around the corner, thousands of pilgrims are expected to return to Rome for the Stations of the Cross. And this year, Pope Francis is entrusting Good Friday's meditations and prayers to families associated with Catholic volunteer and aid organizations. The occasion celebrates the Year of the Family, which began in March of 2021 and will conclude with the 10th World Meeting of Families in June. The Chrism Mass will kick off Holy Week liturgies around the world, and you could catch all of the Diocese of Brooklyn services right here on NET. Here's the rundown. We'll have live coverage of the Chrism Mass on Tuesday, April 12th at 7:30 p.m. with Bishop Brennan. Then on Holy Thursday, Bishop Brennan will celebrate the Mass of the Lord's Supper at 7 p.m. On Good Friday, he will celebrate two services live on NET, the Way of the Cross at 10 a.m. and the Liturgy of the Lord's Passion at 3 p.m. The Easter Vigil with Bishop Brennan will be broadcasted that Saturday at 8 p.m. And on Easter Sunday, 3 bishops will celebrate Masses in different languages. Bishop Witold Morjewski will celebrate the 7 a.m. Polish Mass. Bishop Emeritus Nicholas DiMarzio will celebrate the 8 a.m. Italian. And Bishop Brennan will celebrate the 11 a.m. English. There will also be a 9 a.m. Creole Mass and a 1:30 p.m. Spanish Mass on Easter Sunday for those who wish to celebrate in those languages. Before the Chrism Mass kicks off Tuesday, we'll have live coverage starting at 7 p.m. Father Frank Tomino of St. Francis Xavier Parish will join me on the desk with a look back at Chrism Masses in the past, as well as provide live commentary throughout the service. Again, that starts at 7 p.m. right here on NET TV. As Canadian Indigenous leaders welcome the Pope's apology for abuses at Catholic-run boarding schools, U.S. churches are bracing for a reckoning of their own legacies of operating such schools. A report from the U.S. Department of the Interior is expected later this month, and church schools are likely to be featured prominently in it. The report was prompted by last year's discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves at former residential schools in Canada. In Ukraine, gravediggers are being forced to find new land as the fighting intensifies and casualties climb. Jake Tapper reports from a military funeral in Ukraine where services for fallen officers now have a new look.
Gravediggers at Lykachiv Cemetery in Lviv, western Ukraine, today had to break ground in a fresh field to make room for the new war dead, repurposing the cemetery's adjacent World War II memorial to find space for the influx. Today, it's Ukrainian Army Sergeant Ulbivok Yacheslav, 43, killed March 28th, and Private Hudzilak Lubamir, 33, killed on April 1st. Both killed in Luhansk in the Donbas region. Both men called to service after the Russians invaded. The soldiers' families started this grim day at the Saints Peter and Paul Garrison Church in Lviv. As their caskets passed the crowds on the way into the church, their loved ones wept for those whom they lost to Putin's invading army. The sounds of grief combined with that of prayer. Inside the formerly Jesuit church, built in the 1600s, locals have wrapped historic statues to protect them from debris in case of expected Russian shelling. After the service, a military tribute as mourners paid respects and gave flowers to the families, flowers always in even numbers. Ruslan Stefanchuk, the presiding officer of the Ukrainian parliament, basically the Speaker of the House, stopped by to honor the fallen.
I come here and all my honor and all my heart I put there. The Russia is guilty for everything, crimes, for everything, genocide, what they do in my land. I want the whole world knows that we never forget for nobody.
A spokesman for the city would only say dozens when asked how many locals have been killed fighting to defend their homeland. from the latest Russian threat. The spreading plain here, next to Lykachiv Cemetery, spreading now in order to make room for the dead.
That was Jake Tapper reporting. According to a representative from Lviv's mayoral office, burial ceremonies have been simplified in order to not decrease morale. They also hold up to 3 burials a day. Crews in Puerto Rico are scrambling to restore power after an island-wide blackout. A failure at a main power plant sparked a massive fire. Soon after, Puerto Rico's 3.2 million residents lost electricity. The governor had to suspend classes and work for government employees while crews worked to get the lights back on. A plan has also been put in place to handle traffic on the island. Still to come on Currents News, you'll need a little extra cash the next time you're craving a slice in New York City. And a tiny baby conquers a huge tumor. The incredible story after the break. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A slice of pizza in New York is now more expensive than a ride on the subway. That's according to Bloomberg. For decades, they both hovered around the same price, but higher prices of ingredients have pushed the price of a slice to a little more than $3, and a ride on the subway is now $2.75. Wow. A Wisconsin family is in awe as they celebrate their little boy's first birthday. He had a medical condition that surprised even the pros, but the family was able to find their life-saving miracle at a children's hospital in Minnesota. A baby's first birthday, it's always a milestone, but in this case, it's a miracle.
Can you even get your head around everything that happened to get him here?
No, it still amazes me.
Michaela and Donovan, parents to an almost 1-year-old girl, found out they were expecting a boy. But when they got an ultrasound, there was something they were not expecting.
He had what's called an oropharyngeal teratoma. And they can be really small or they can be quite large. His was huge. So it's a condition that happens in 1 to 35,000 to 1 in 200,000 live births. They can block the airway. So the moment the baby's born, they wouldn't have the ability to protect their airway and they wouldn't be able to breathe.
That's when they decided to head south from Hayward to Minneapolis to the Midwest Fetal Care Center.
I think I cried almost every appointment up until he was there. It's just so unknown.
Dr. Lilligard and his co-workers knew what to do. It would require a C-section where the baby would be partially born while doctors removed the grapefruit-sized tumor coming from his mouth and face.
You're debulking a huge tumor. So when I come across the tumor, you're taking all this very special blood supply and you have to do so in a baby who can't breathe on his own, needs all that support from the placenta because the surgery itself takes, 20 or 30 minutes.
It was risky.
I mean, we went into my C-section not knowing if he would be okay or if I would.
But they were okay.
It's pretty remarkable. You go from a really horrific type scene to really a quite normal, exciting, almost perfect-like outcome. The sky's the limit for Jager. He can do anything.
He's a miracle. And that's the best way that I think any of us can describe him. He's the perfect, happy, smiley little miracle. And we're so grateful that we ended up where we did.
So adorable. After conquering the tumor, Jager was able to leave the hospital after 76 days. However, he did have a recent setback. He was treated for hydrocephalus, a buildup of fluid in the brain. But his family says he's now recovering and getting stronger every day. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.